Before we get to the video proper, I'd like to let you all know that I'm currently gathering questions for a Q&A since I reached 100 subscribers. Link to that video is in the description. Be sure to watch the video and ask your questions in the comment section. You may also suggest a run to do for a 100 subscriber special if you wish to. You'll have until December 8th to ask any questions that come to mind. So if you have any, get on over there and ask. That's all. I hope you enjoy this video and have a good day. Hello everyone and welcome to Burnt Toaster Productions. I'm your host, Burnt Toaster. I have another run I decided to do for Fable 2, mostly because I was more or less curious about how viable it was. So enough chit chat, let's get to those rules. I can only deal damage with a cutlass and flintlock. The only way I can heal is by consuming alcohol, which means no potions, food, or sleeping to heal wounds. If I'm at max health, I can sleep to pass time. No magic is allowed. Accuracy, speed, and physique can be upgraded to max. Everything else can only be upgraded once. As a bonus objective, I can only be knocked out 3 times. You can classify the run as a failure if I get knocked out more than 3 times. However, I will continue to push forward and finish the journey I set out on. Now that the rules are out of the way, let's get into the run. As usual, we're a poor street urchin living in Bowerstone Old Town. A traveling merchant comes by, presumably selling junk. But thanks to a blind lady, Rose finds the courage to get the money to buy a music box. And since I'm doing a themed run here, I decided to be an absolute menace, which means I ruined Barnum's photo, smashed Balthazar's stock, gave Pete his bottle, handed those warrants over to Arthur, and gave Belinda's mother Monty's letter. Now that we have 5 gold, we can buy the music box. We buy it, turn the handle, and it disappears. Disappointed, Rose suggests we go to bed. Of course, we get woken up because our dream is somewhat coming true. Guards have come to escort us to Castle Fairfax. With that said, we meet Lucian. He tells us to stand in a circle, and after touching the light emanating from it, he gets shocked and decides to pull out a flintlock, shooting both Rose and Sparrow. 10 years later, we set off with a goal in mind: stop Lucian at any cost. But first, we have to go through the tutorial area for combat training. Now, I know I said I could only deal damage with a flintlock and cutlass, but as far as I know, I have no way of guaranteeing getting one or the other until I can get to Bowerstone Market. So for the time being, I'll stick with my rusty sword and really chunky crossbow. The giant beetles here don't stand much of a chance against my combat prowess anyway, so it wouldn't really matter. I get to the end fairly quickly. Of course, before we can use the call skate, we have to use magic to get it working. In light of that, I buy 1 level of force push, hit the call skate with it, and immediately forget the spell. Afterwards, I use the call skate, destroy any beetles standing in my way, and head over to Bowerstone. Except I can't, since the road is closed due to bandits being the nuisance they usually are in any fantasy setting. And that means doing a bit of bounty hunting. I make it to Thag's hut and fight up his crew until he makes his appearance. The fight wasn't too horrendous as Sparrow here knocks him over and puts his sword through Thag, but that's not the end of this little area. There are a couple of people locked up in a cage, and to get them out you need to grab a key from the hut. Once you do, you'll have a moral choice to make. You can either give the key to Dick, which is quite literally his name, and get some money, or fight him and let the people out. Well, since the way to Bowerstone Market is open, I decided to just hand over the key and be on my merry way. The first thing I decided to do when in Bowerstone is sell some things. I've got potions and a few other odds and ends that will help raise my capital without requiring honest work. Sparrow's kind of allergic to that stuff. After selling whatever goods I had on my person, I visited the smith to try and find a good blade and gun. Sadly, he didn't have a cutlass at all, and the only flintlock pistol he had was of the rusty variety. With that disappointing revelation, I head to the drink stall and buy my healing supplies of choice, then head to the tavern to buy some more. I take a bit of time to customize Sparrow just a bit and finally meet up with Teresa. She gives me information on the spire and tells me that I'll have to gather 3 heroes. Like I said in the rules, I can only use a cutlass and flintlock, and that means in order to take out these bandits, I must use my rusty pistol. It takes a little bit, but I eventually get through them and make it to the destroyed bridge. I jump down, swim to the shore of a tiny beach, put a guy down for a permanent nap, and head through the cave. Hobs are running around here, and taking them out with only a rusty flintlock isn't the most exciting endeavor. especially in the last area where there are large groups of them. But eventually I make it out and take out those bandits that were chilling out on the other side of the bridge. Once I'm in Oakfield, I take the opportunity to get more healing supplies in the tavern before continuing the main quest. Now that I'm mostly ready to get some quests done, I head on to the abbot at the Temple of Light to apply for guard duty. But since it is his daughter I'll be protecting, he is understandably hesitant and would rather send someone who has made a name for themselves. As usual, the bridge to Barrowstone is gone, and that means I have to take out some bandits. I'm still having to use that rusty pistol since I have yet to find a cutlass. So a lot of shooting later, the dog traps dash, and I have the perfect opportunity to take him out from afar. With him gone, I can return to Barnum and be able to go back to Barrowstone. I take a little trip to Barrowstone to visit the smith, and he finally has a cutlass for sale. It may only be a rusty piece of junk, but at least I can now engage in melee combat instead of shooting everything like a madman. I also go around and buy some more healing supplies and make my way back to Rookridge to talk to the ghost of a jilted lover. Since this is an evil playthrough, I'm helping him get some revenge. I go back to Barrowstone, get this woman to fall in love with me, and hand her the rejection note. Afterwards, I go to the stylist in Barrowstone to get this man a beard, because with the chops and mustache combo, he looked reminiscent of Fat Bastard. Although now I'm kind of kicking myself for deciding to go with a beard rather than keeping the mutton chops. With beard growing done, I go back to the ghost and, well, it didn't end quite so happily. He came pretty close to being with Alex and instead ended up alone. I needed a bit more renown, so I went to the sculptor and posed for her. I failed the expression extension, but oh well, I still got my renown and can talk to the abbot again. He's impressed by my deeds and tells me where to meet the monk I need to escort through a cave. We meet Hannah outside of the cave and get inside. The first chamber doesn't have anything exciting going on. It's mostly a matter of standing around and, well, that's it. When we get out, that's when things start happening. The dead have decided to come back to life to stop us, for some reason. Regardless, hollow men are not that difficult to dispatch, and I take the opportunity to get some strength experience, since the next chamber will require the usage of my rusty flintlock. Even though it's rusty, it still puts in enough work to take out the hollow men without too many complications. After that chamber, I've got the pleasure of dealing with a number of waves of undead as well as a little boss before we can finish this quest. The boss fight is actually fairly easy going, even though I've only been using rusty weapons. Anyway, after taking out the headless buffoon, we make it to the final chamber, and before Hannah can finish the prayer, we get the news that her father is being held at gunpoint by one of Lucian's men. She naturally smacks that man with a hammer that probably destroyed his entire being, including his soul. Teresa drops by after the little funeral and takes Hannah with her, which gives me some time to go and buy some more healing supplies since those hollow men did put a little dent in them. After a little while, Teresa calls me back to the guild. She has found out where the hero of Will is located in Brightwood, so that means I get the pleasure of going over there and trying to grab the guy before Lucian does. However, things don't work out super smoothly since Lucian's men are all over the place, and fighting them with rusty weapons isn't something I wanted to do again. They're pretty tanky and also deal some decent damage to my very limited health pool. Also doesn't help that it's taking a while to take them out, partially due to my weapon quality at the moment and lacking the ability to flourish. I will say the last thing you want to do is loot in this run since it can easily screw you over. If you have higher quality healing items like potions or foods, the game will suggest using those over everything else once your health gets to a certain point. And that's the story of the first knockout of the run. Honestly, I wasn't intending to use that resurrection file. I would have preferred selling it since it funded me a new blade and gun. Eventually, I get through that slogfest and it looks like I'm too late. Garth is already being taken away, which means Teresa will have to devise a new plan. In the meantime, I head to the taverns to refill my healing supplies. Once I feel I'm good to go, it's time to do a little side questing. I decided to do the quest Red Harvest since I know I'll need more renown fairly soon. Basic premise is to meet up with a bandit crew, whistle 3 times, get info on the job, and then go take out Giles and some guards. I kind of regretted doing this quest now since I had to deal with a large group of tough enemies, or at least they seemed tough since I'm still stuck with rusty weapons. Every time I went to Barrowstone Market, the smith didn't have anything that I could use. Technically, the quest ends once Giles hits the ground, but I wanted to take out the guards and do a little looting since I'll be returning to one of the 2 cities that have any amount of stores. And while I don't get any loot, instead I get to know Ripper's secret, which is he and his crew got dressed in women's attire and danced around. I was just going to hand the journal back to him since I'm not going to judge, but then he decided it'd be better to silence me, which meant I had to fight 3 more fairly tough enemies. Ripper also has a special charge ability that isn't easy to dodge. Well, at least for me. Yeah, it didn't take too long for my second knockout of the run to happen, and the third. I had a feeling that I wasn't going to be able to get through this run without being knocked out more since I'm working with such low health. Of course, it'd help if I had a half-decent weapon that I can use. Thankfully, after a nice little while of fighting, Ripper is done for. Now I can go back to the guild and find out what Teresa has cooked up. So I get to the guild and she tells me Lucian's old butler knows where Lucian's diary is being kept. Which means I get to go to the Bowerstone Tavern, pay this man 1,000 gold, and go dig it up myself. Good thing is, on my way there, I found a wandering light weapons trader who had an iron cutlass for sale. It may only be marginally better, but at least it's more damage being dished out. Now, while I can't use the cutlass for this upcoming fight, the troll doesn't fare too well against a rusty flintlock. Once the troll has been defeated, it's time to dig up the diary and head back to Teresa so she can read it. Looks like Lucian is recruiting men from the Crucible and Westcliff, specifically winners. Since Hammer ran off to experience the thrill of combat, I'm to meet with her at Westcliff Road in Brightwood. Before we get into Westcliff properly, we must tread through the Bandit coast, which isn't horrendously difficult without flourishes. The fights here may take a bit. Regardless, after ridding the area of most of its bandit population, I get to take out the encampment that includes the first fight with a highwayman. Like the rest of this area, the fight wasn't difficult, just tedious. He blocks after maybe 2 melee attacks and will occasionally dodge gunfire. However, while I was trying to shoot him, Hammer took him out. The only thing left in the vicinity were a few stragglers that didn't jump face first into the initial battle. After all of the bandits have been taken to the farm upstate, Hammer and I can push onwards towards Westcliff. As soon as we're in Westcliff, I open up that chest that's sitting just outside the entrance, which gives me a much needed upgrade as a steel cutlass resides inside. Although it slightly disappointed me that I didn't really get to use the iron one all that long. Oh well, I'll just sell it when I get the chance. A little extra money never hurts. The big enemy here are Balverines. They are as annoying as ever. Actually, a little more so since flourishes typically offer iframes that have some pretty generous timing. I don't have that luxury this time around, but thanks to my new cutlass and higher than average strength, I can fight the rabid puppies without too many issues. That is if the block would work half the time. I hate that swiping combo so much. Anyway, we find a woman who said Balverines attacked her, played fetch with her husband, and took her son. Sounds unlikely, so I attacked her. She then leapt into the trees after laughing like a demon. Pushing forward, I unlocked that demon door while fighting some more Balverines. And now we have to go through that creepy temple and fend off some more canine friends. I have to try to hold out long enough for Hammer to see that pillar and knock it over. That didn't go as smoothly as I wanted it to, but oh well. This time, instead of running away as soon as the makeshift bridge was complete, I stayed to fight the white Balverine. I had at least a little confidence that I could take it out, which I was able to. It may have hit like a Mack truck, but it couldn't stop a deranged alcoholic from taking it down for good. With all that done, we made it to the Westcliff camp. Because I still had that rusty pistol from the beginning of the game, I made a little stop at the weapons stall and got an iron flintlock. I sadly couldn't afford the steel variant. I also couldn't go right into the crucible since I still needed some more renown. Thankfully, I don't need a lot of renown, so a single quest should knock the requirement out. I decided to do the quest for Sam and Max, which involves going to the Bowerstone Cemetery and eradicating the undead that aren't asleep anymore. It's quick, easy, and will give me more than enough renown. All I have to do is fight some low-level hollowmen. 2 strikes with my cutlass and they're done for. With all the fighting done, I return the magical book to the brothers and get the renown I needed. I also decided to go on a tiny little crime spree in Old Town and later went to see what the reward from the demon door in Westcliff is. It was a legendary mace. It looks metal as hell and I wish I could use it, but this run is weapon restricted. Since I can't use it in battle, I decided to sell it and buy myself a steel flintlock pistol before heading into the crucible. With mostly everything ready, I start this thing. The giant beetles stand no chance with my new cutlass and gun. Only the third wave were giving me anything remotely close to real issues, but they're only beetles. The next round was not horrible. Hobs tend to be more annoying than anything, but the last wave was worse than usual. I was getting pelted left and right by gunfire, and it didn't help that the armored up red guys were harassing me as well. Eventually I take out the hobs and can move on to the next round, which contains, you guessed it, more hobs. Except these guys are of the explosive and magically inclined variety. Ooh, spooky. It wasn't that bad, all things considered. It was actually pretty smooth. The next round is full of hollow men. This was perhaps the easiest round, as I didn't take much damage and the walking bony boys can't block. They're also pretty slow, so they got scattered like dust to the wind. Sadly, the next round wasn't quite so easy. Bandits are far from the most annoying enemies, but the big guys are moderately tanky. Though I did have like 4 of them surrounding me and one of them knocked me out. Regardless, this round didn't have too much going on. The next round was more bandits with highwaymen thrown into the mix, and the endless abyss. This one took a nice little bit of time, as it usually does for me. But besides knocking people off to the abyss, not much really happened. However, after that round, there's a trader room, and I've been performing well enough to get some nice bonuses from the crowd. I had the money to buy a master weapon. I settled on the flintlock since it dealt more damage, and well, there's a round that I'll definitely be using it in. As for the next round, it's the Belverines. Little do they know, I have a gun. And boy does it put in work. Even the white Belverine was a bit of a pushover. The last round is with the Rock Troll. This is the round I was alluding to earlier. I should be able to take this thing out pretty quickly. That is if I can deal with the hobs that'll inevitably spawn. Once they're done, I can end the troll within 1 minute and 29 seconds. Now that I'm done with the crucible, I can move on to the next main quest, but I also wanted to do a couple of things before leaving. Due to having a master flintlock, I wanted to get a master cutlass as well. After my purchase, I didn't have the money to give to Barnum, so I decided to take on an assassination job. Wasn't difficult at all. With the money now in my hands, I give it to Barnum, who will pay me when I come back to Albion. Now that I have nothing else left to do in Albion, I head off to the docks and begin my service in the spire, which means having to look at the horrifying creature that is the hero. Anyway, the commandant wants me to report to him, so that's what I do. I follow his directions, thanking him for hitting me and begging him to show mercy. Some time passes and it's time for guard duty. It's pretty uneventful. All I have to do is stand around for 3 minutes. More time passes and the commandant wants me to report to him again. Bob is up to his usual shenanigans, you know, mentally snapping. Well, this is an evil playthrough, so I gladly grab that cutlass and put Bob out of his misery. Even more time passes and the commandant wants me to check on a guard who hasn't reported in. I get over there and find the guy on the floor with some raspberry jam on his chest. Guess he had an eventful lunch break. Garth then gets rid of the collar and I can get to fighting. Sadly, the pistol is clockwork, which means I can't use it, but I do at least have a steel cutlass. The combat in this section isn't the most enjoyable, and that's because I don't have the ability to use flourishes, or a gun. These guards hit pretty hard and I don't have any healing supplies since all of my drinks are back on the mainland. I get knocked out at least 3 times before making it to the commandant's chamber. Prepare for that to double because the commandant is a bit of a damage sponge, and there'll be some peons popping in while I fight him. After falling 3 more times, I put the commandant down, which means Garth and I can get the hell out of here. Once I make it back to shore, I head to Bowerstone to get my hair and tattoos back in order, then head to Westcliff to get my investment back from Barnum, plus 10 years interest. Because I know I'll likely need more renown to get to the last hero, I settled on doing a quest that requires me to clear out some hobs. It's far from difficult, and then at the end I have to put down the crazed individual that sent me here. Well, that was quick. I meet with Hammer, do a little job while waiting for Teresa to contact me, and then head back to the guild. The only way to get to the last hero is to use a call skate at Garth's old domicile, which has plenty of spire guards to take on, and a shard. But this time I have a decent firearm and can gun it down before it becomes too big of a problem. Then comes the time I have to defend Garth while he gets the call skate operational. Once again, flourishes are your best friend here because you can knock the guards off of the building, ending them instantly. However, I make do with what I have, and after a good little bit, the gate is open and ready for me to use. Although it malfunctioned, forcing Garth and Hammer to go back to the guild. The malfunction also allowed some old guy to capture me and stick me in a cage. The doofus decided to go into the fog that just materialized and his soul got devoured by a banshee. The dog grabs the key and that means I can let myself out. Of course I got to fight the banshee, which was almost buttery smooth. I only needed to wipe out 2 waves of the banshee's children to exorcise it with gunfire. Anyway, I just had to get through the marsh and take out a few hollow men here and there, plus another banshee, and some more hollow men. Now I'm free to get into Bloodstone. Of course, Reaver won't really talk to me until I have enough renown, which means I have some more side quests to do. The first quest I settled on doing was TOBY. It's a pretty simple and easy quest. I just have to fetch 3 items, find a woman of the night, and bring them back to Toby. Then someone will tell me he's just a scamming little weasel, and it's up to me to either scare him off or get rid of him through more direct means. I think you all know what I'm about to do. Now I just need to do one more quest, and then I'll be able to talk to Reaver. I accepted rescuing Charlie. All I have to do is go into a tomb and help him out with possibly finding some treasure. First, I have to defend him from the Hollow Men, which was pretty easy. Then I have to help him open the sarcophagus, or tomb, or whatever the hell you want to call it. The only thing we get is a note from the looters that came here previously, which were Sam and Max. Now we have to get out of here, but first I have to deal with Charlie. Now I can grab his birthday present once I get out of here. With my side questing done, I can finally talk to Reaver and do a favor for him. I have to deliver a seal to some shadowy friends of his. I get over there and have to fight some shadows. They're not really all that difficult, but to be fair, I have master weapons. Anyway, I find the place I need to go and have a choice to make. I can either sacrifice my youth so Reaver can retain his, or give it to the poor young woman who unfortunately found herself here. Well, here you go, miss. Enjoy. Of course, I'm not cruel, so after the Shadow Court finished their dialogue, I put her out of her misery. Now I can return back to Reaver and begin the end. So I had some complications while recording. As you can tell, there isn't any video for the Great Shard fight and the stretch before it. The first time the game glitched after defeating the shard, it got soft-locked since someone didn't say their line. At the time, I was a little annoyed, but I was okay with it. All I needed to do was quit the game and start the quest over. Well, another issue cropped up. As I was recording, my power went out for a moment. I got to the dream section, which is after the shard fight. The game autosaved as soon as I reached the dream. Apologies for the inconvenience. There was nothing I could do to save the footage, and I didn't have enough time to restart the game from the beginning. Regardless, I finished the dream section and confront Lucien. Just like he did to me, Rose, and my dog, I shot him with a master flintlock. Now it's time to make my wish. The hero is a downright despicable individual, so he went for the money. 1 million gold, all for his taking. With the wish made and gold collected, the run is finished. This was a run I wanted to do for a while after my first Fable 2 run. And yeah, it's possible. Although, like I said in the rules, you can consider the run failed since I got knocked out more than 3 times. But to be fair, I only had 1 level of toughness, which didn't help in the slightest. Regardless, I actually enjoyed this run, though it's mostly because I had an excuse to listen to Ye Banished Privateers, Ailstorm, and The Longest Johns while I was recording. Anyway, thanks for watching all the way through. If you want to see more Fable runs, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. This has been Burnt Toaster from Burnt Toaster Productions, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now!